over 28 years. I taught at university school, I taught in Virginia, and my area of expertise is little people. I work in kindergarten and first grade, and I love what I did. I just loved being a teacher and having those little minds to work with, and to see them see something for the very first time and be actually at that place to watch them discover that this is something they never knew they could do before, or they're seeing it for the first time. And as they are discovering that they're seeing it for the first time, you get to see it new all over again. It is just, it's a precious, precious moment. So I really loved what I did. I knew that I was going to be a teacher when I was about 12 years old. I had a little friend that had come over, and we had a pool in our yard, and she jumped off the diving board. Of course, one of the things is, can you swim? You always ask somebody before they get in the pool, can you swim? And she said, oh yes, I can swim. Well, I got on the diving board and jumped off. Well, she followed me right off and jumped off and went right to the bottom, and I kept waiting for her to come back up. And when she didn't, I realized that she couldn't get back up. And so I saved her and pulled her out from the bottom of the pool. And it was at that point that I said to her, I said, why did you do that? And she said, because I didn't want you to know that I didn't know how to swim. And I said, swimming is so easy. It's so easy to learn how to do something like this. Let me teach you. And I said, if you'll come over every day, you know, we'll work together and I'll teach you how to swim, which is exactly what I did. And it gave me so much joy in being able to share that with her and empower her to be able to do something that she couldn't do before and that she felt that she was not capable of doing. It was kind of when I realized at 12 that I really liked that, and I liked being a part of the teaching process. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that I retired just a little over 18 months ago. And I will tell you that the year after I retired was one of the hardest years I've ever had. I thought I was prepared. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I was really excited about having some free time and being busy and on my own terms and sleeping in the morning and those kinds of things. And soon realized that that was not exactly the way it was going to be. And actually, for the first probably 4 or 5 months after I left the classroom, I got really depressed. I mean, I love working with kids. And when you love what you do, to leave it so abruptly, I mean, when you had over 100 hugs a day, which, by the way, you need a minimum of 8 a day. Did you know this? You probably don't. But truly, it is a documented fact that you need at least 8 hugs a day to be minimally healthy. And I had over 100 hugs a day. Yeah, so if you're married or if you have friends, reach out and hug somebody and think about it every day, because as you are giving one, you're getting one back. But keep a count. People need to be touched. Mm-hmm. And I was blessed to have a classroom full of people and parents that were always welcome in my classroom. My door was always open. You didn't have to let me know you were coming, and just come on in and be part of our group. And so I got a lot of hugs, and I realized after I left teaching, I didn't have that anymore. And I'm married, but I'm married to an older gentleman, and we don't have any children together, and my kids are all gone, and it's like, oh my gosh, I went into kind of a place where I needed more than I was getting. And one of the things that really troubled me about why I left is because the things that I did well. I am a highly qualified teacher in the state of Tennessee. I'm recognized as such. I enjoyed an excellent reputation in Franklin, in Williamson County Schools. Kids asked and wanted to be in my classroom. Parents would go and solicit the principal to have them placed in my class. I requested students that I'd had before from families, because I already built that relationship and that rapport with those people, and it created a really good learning environment for the child. And so I really enjoyed what I was doing, but one of the reasons that I left is the things that I did well, the community I was able to build in my classroom, teaching kids rights and responsibilities. You know, for every responsibility, there's a right, but for every right, you have a responsibility that coincides with that. And you need to learn what those are to be balanced and to keep, you know, peace and quiet and cooperation at work in a classroom. There's just certain things that kids need to know, and they don't always get these things at home. And what better place in a classroom when you've got lots of personalities in people to teach those kinds of things. Well, in the last couple of years, those things are not valued anymore. And they don't care about how well you interact with your kids and what kinds of things that you teach. They have their own agenda about what they want to do and what timeline it has to be done in, and that you're going to be tested out the window and back with all of the different kinds of tests, benchmarking and everything else that they're doing all the time. Well, you know, I recognize as kids get older, you do need to collect data, and you do need that scoring, if you will, to kind of get a sense about what they're learning and those kinds of things. But little people, when you have a kindergartner that comes in and has never been to school before, or doesn't know their ABCs, or doesn't know how to read, or any of those kinds of things, to challenge them and to put things in front of them that are inappropriate from a developmental standpoint, that is wrong. And I am not going to endorse that. And in fact, the longer I've been away from teaching, which has been about 18 months, I am so angry about what people are doing to our education. We had a great public education for kids. I went through public education. My kids went through public education. They top 10 of their classes. I mean, they got what they needed, and they went on to go to college and have wonderful careers. I have a doctor, I have a pilot, and I have an artist. And the thing about it is that it's not like that anymore. And the things that teachers my age were able to bring is a sense of perspective, experience from having all the people and the kids that we've taught, the families that we've had to deal with, the different settings that we've been in, and it's just no longer, it doesn't matter anymore. In fact, I'm a hazard. They don't want me in the classroom because I can say, when did we start doing this? This is something that we haven't done before, and I don't think that this is a really great thing for the little people that I'm serving. And, well, that's your opinion, Ms. Emerson, but you work for the county's endorsed this, your superintendent has signed off on it. Oh, and by the way, we've got all of these great books for you, these new books and manipulatives and everything that are going to help you with these mandates or these learning standards or indicators that we have set up for you. And the more I've learned as I've gotten away from my classroom, the angrier I've become. And so I have become very active in finding common core. One of the things that really bothers me too, and I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that just has blown me away is how little people know about the United States Constitution of America. Our founding fathers wrote that document for us at this point in our time. And the thing that bothers me is there's so many people that do not know anything about it. One of the things that I think resonates with me is that in Amendment 10, it is very, very, very clear that there is absolutely no place for federal government in education. In fact, in the Constitution itself, the word education is not even mentioned, other than the fact that what parents and citizens of a state deem necessary for their population and for their kids, that is their role. That is their place. Those are their decisions to make. The federal government has absolutely no place whatsoever in education. And the fact that we're sitting here and watching President Obama and all of these other people mandate and tell us what we're going to teach and how we're going to do it, and we're going to have a nationalized curriculum that we are going to promote now so that all of these kids, you know, there's only about 2% of students a year in each state that migrate across state lines. Did you know that? It's not a huge number of people that are going from one school system to another. And it's kind of like Obamacare. They have flipped that whole healthcare system upside down for about 15% of the population. 80 to 85% of the people were happy with their healthcare. And they're doing the same thing to education. So one of the things that I would encourage you all to do is learn your Constitution. Learn what it says. Speak to that. Our civil rights were created so that we had a voice in our government, and we are not exercising that voice at all. We're not. People are concerned. I had a couple the other day, and she said, well, you know, we don't have kids in the school system. You know, we're older, and our kids are gone. I said, you pay taxes, don't you? And she said, well, yes, we do. And I said, well, that's your money that's going into state that's spending that money on education. Therefore, you have a right and really a responsibility to dictate where that money goes, because you're the voice of the government. So I just want to say that I just think it's time that we get back in touch with the things that ran this country, our founding fathers and the principles that they established. I'm a big believer in biblical principles. They're good principles. You know, do good to others as you would have others do unto you. Yes, is it in the Bible? Yes, it is. But is it a good principle to live by? Yes. The things that were biblical, that we were founded on, are really universal. And there's no reason to throw them out. We are not living in a democracy. Most people think we live in a democracy where the majority rules. We live in a republic, and it's a different kind of government. So again, like I say, I get pretty worked up about this as a teacher, because it really makes me very angry about how little the kids that are in school now know about their civil rights, about anything to do with government except what they have been taught. And with that, the last thing I want to leave you with is that one of the major problems that we are all fighting is that the information in the textbooks that your children are reading and learning by and the teachers are teaching are just fraught with inaccuracies. I mean, lies, if you want to be specific, lies. And the thing that, did you know that Jesus was a Palestinian? Did you know that? And that he lived in an occupied country? Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's in textbooks, that kind of information. And the kids in school, I don't care if they're in high school, they're not old enough. They don't have enough world experience. They haven't lived as long as we have. And they don't know anything other than the fact that, well, if it's in the textbook and my teacher tells me, it must be so. And that's how they're learning that. So we have really got to stand up and start making our voices heard. If the state of Tennessee adopts Common Core, and we're very close to it, you know, we've stirred the pot and we've gotten some attention, and after Christmas they're going to start passing some legislation that may or may not have a positive impact on the direction that it's going. But now is the time to start making some noise and getting some attention. Because once that passes, you, whether you know it or not, no longer have a voice at all in what your child is learning, what they're reading, the classes that they're taking, if they are in public education. The sex education alone would curl your hair if you knew what they were doing in kindergarten. I'm sorry, it's inappropriate. I'm not rude, but I'm telling you what, they do not need to be handling penises and body parts and passing these little plush toys around and, oh, it feels so good and everything. I'm sorry, that just makes me want to throw up. And then it makes me so angry I could cry. This is not appropriate for our children. It's not developmentally right, and it's not right for our country. Yes, ma'am.
Would you give us a definition of Common Core?
Common Core that's a great question. Common Core is a lot of things, and a lot of things get thrown underneath the umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
There are Common Core standards, okay? And you hear a lot about the standards.
That's why I'm here.
That's what I'm hearing.
And that's what you're going to hear. The standards are basically a skeleton, if you will, of learning indicators in each content area. Are you with me? So like you have English over here, you have math over here. Social studies is the hot button right now with the standards that they expect your students to learn by. Okay? And some of those in and of themselves are learning indicators. Now they'll tell you that they were developed with benchmarks by the world's learning indicators, and that is not true. That is not true. And you don't have to take my word for it. I encourage you to get on the computer and do your own research. I'm telling you the truth. They are substandard. The people that helped create those standards will not, the teachers, there were several people involved in that whole process. They will not put their names to it because they do not, they're not what they...
And we can get you some of that.
Absolutely.
We've got
Do you have some of the paper? We've got the papers with the information
that I
and
can get names and I can send it to you.
Yeah.
we've got them all for you. And
So the Common Core is there, but you need to understand, if you've got a standard here, a learning indicator, you've got to have, let's back up a little bit, you've got to have the material, okay, to teach that standard or that learning indicator. And then you come over here and you've got to have tests that test the knowledge of what the kids have learned in the books and what they're also, you know, getting from the standards. And that's the problem right there, because it's fraught with all kinds of inaccuracies, biases, all kinds of things. I know you're dying, you're chomping on the bit.
no, I don't keep going.
But
I think we'll answer some of them.
Yeah, that being said, it is a misnomer. The thing that is happening is that it's really already changing the name. Obama's already changed the name and it's working on something else, but it is Common Core. And he wants a national standard for education.
Did there not used to be years ago?
Never, ever. National, never.
No, it's the
Never,
old one.
never, never. I taught for 28 years, never.
In
did
fact,
that.
37, I'm talking when I was a child.
No.
Was there not a
No,
common?
no. It was in that place, that's your school. It wasn't even your county, it was your school that determined what books you were gonna use and what curriculum you had. And the teachers within that building decided from beginning to end kind of what you were gonna have.
Remember Weekly Reader?
Oh, yes.
Okay, in
yes.
second grade, I'm sorry.
We
When
had
I
the
was in
Weekly
second
Reader.
grade, we had this Weekly Reader thing, and why I remember this, I don't know. But it said that across the nation, all the children were reading this Weekly Reader, and we were all studying, I don't know what it was. But which led me to believe all these years that there was this.
In fact, there was no federal Department of Education until the Carter administration.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And
That's right.
until Bush introduced
No.
No Child Left
Yes.
Behind.
Disaster.
That there wasn't even, that there were huge issues with that. And going back to Eisenhower, and I'm sorry, at the end of World War II, there was a real sort of blow up because with the population boom, there weren't nearly enough schools. So people were urging the federal government across the nation, especially in the South, we need you to start building more decent schools. And even though everyone knew the need, and especially with different Supreme Court decisions coming down, everybody knew the need was there, but there was a real hesitancy to offer up the funding for it out of the fear that education would become nationalized, and that it was such a dangerous thing and so specifically forbidden that even though there was a need for the government to build schools, they were very, very, very reluctant, and the states and locals were reluctant to receive the funds because they didn't want Big Brother coming in and telling them what to do.
Can I add something, just, I know,
Absolutely.
and I'm sorry, I'm the big mouth in the back of the room. You want to address Title I too? I mean, because the monies that came in, it came under LBJ. And when LBJ and the Congress had written Title I, they specifically said the money can go toward education, but you cannot. It is against the Constitution, it's against constitutional law. You cannot dictate to the schools that get the money what they are supposed to teach. It is against federal law.
It is, because
So what they're doing is they're taking this money, and what happened was this federal money, Title I money, raced to the top in 2009, came to these schools, and the schools had their hands tied, and the federal government said, you're gonna get the money, but you have to take everything that comes with the money.
right.
Well, what comes with the money? We don't know. There's a new
It hasn't
system
been
being written right now.
It hasn't been.
We don't know
We've
what-
got to
we
pass
haven't
it before
completed
you
it.
can know what's in it. Was
We
literally
haven't
what was
completed
said.
it. Yes, we haven't completed it. So what they did was they never took it to the state legislatures.
Nobody
It was
voted
never
for it.
voted on by
before
the
they
people, the
passed it.
counties, the tribute, the
Think it-
townships. Nobody got a vote. And it went into the states through our governor, who signed it into
Who
law, who
sits
was
on the board
Bredesen.
of
He
the
was on the
company
board
writing
of
it.
chief that helped to write the Common Core. And now it's in the federal, it's in our system because we took the money. And that's where the real argument is. Well, what are we gonna do about the money because we got all this money to take Common Core?
Except for if we're going to abide by the law, okay, let's just get crazy here and think that we're going to abide by the laws that have been written. Federal law specifically forbids the federal government from any mandate that would influence curriculum or specific educational standards. They cannot do it. And it cannot be tied to educational funding. So, here's the deal with what I would say about the Title I funds. If core is a federal mandate, then it's illegal and we get to keep the money.
Period.
If it is not a mandate, then we are free to reject core and we get to keep the money. Because the fact is, the government in Washington or in Nashville, it's not their money. It's our money. It's our tax dollars. And here's the reality, they only have power so long as we comply.
That's right.
And when we're not rude, not ugly, but simply say, we refuse. I will not do this, and I certainly will not allow you to do this to my children. Then, once again, we get to stand up and go, no, you work for me, not the other way around. And I think we forget a lot of that. Was I cutting you off? I'm
That's all
sorry.
right. No, just checking my notes to see that, we're kind of.
Okay, and by the way, Candy is the expert going back a ways on school policy. This is Lana. If you want to know data mining, if you want to know, and I'm not talking tinfoil hat stuff. I'm talking things that can be found in Department of Ed documents. Things that guys at the Capitol, like Jack Johnson, Mike Bell, Judd Matheny, have all said, oh, we're getting nervous about this stuff that's going on. That Lana is an expert on that. And Denise, I get literally hundreds of emails a day. And the stuff that Denise sends out on education is some of the very few stuff. If she sends out something, I'll go, this is worth reading. I am Julie West, and I ended up with an organization, Parents for Truth and Education, because my son came home one day and he asked me, well, who does Israel belong to? And I tell him, I think that question answers itself, Samuel. And he said, no, I know what our family believes, and we've got a large number of Jewish relatives, by the way. I know what our family believes, and I know what the church teaches, but really, according to like right and wrong and international law, who should that land belong to? So at this point, because we've done all the right things to make sure our kids are in a good school and we're working our tails off so that we can be the good parents that we're supposed to be, right? I'm convinced that my kid has just misunderstood something. And I almost blew it off and go, well, they'll get him straightened out. And then I'm like, no, this is kind of a big issue. So I go up to the school simply to say, hey, I need you to talk to my kid because, boy, he's really misunderstood some of the things that you're teaching. At which point, I and my husband, after a series of meetings, are informed that if we weren't such bigots, we would understand that Palestine is a nation being denied its state by the Jews.
Wow.
And
What school was this?
Franklin High School. But by the way, this is being taught in schools across the state.
nation.
Yeah, across the nation and across the state. We were further informed in this meeting that the Christian Crusaders were no more moral than the 9/11 terrorists. And, well, the list goes on and on and on, and it's like, hold on, let me get a better look at this textbook. Oh, my personal favorite, the one where I'm like you'll, and I think God allowed this one because I left the meeting and I was so furious, I was almost irrational because I fully expected them, okay? I went in and I had my evidence and I'm like, hey, my kid's misunderstanding some things. And by the way, you've got some really bad stuff in this book, so if we can just tweak this and deal with this. And I fully expected them to go, oh my goodness, Mrs. West, we are so sorry. We are so sorry. We're going to get this straightened out because we know this isn't true. And in fact, I literally had a principal say to my husband and I, well, of course we know the information is bad. All the textbooks have things that aren't true in them, but it's what we have to teach because it's on the national test at the end of the year.
Yes.
And she,
Now, when they say that this is evidence-based, they keep repeating this, evidence-based, but I have never seen any of the evidence-based
No.
material that it's based on.
because,
And here is the evidence that I am seeing that we are graduating children who
They're dumb as
who
rocks.
cannot read, they cannot write cursive, they cannot spell, and they cannot pass a 4th grade math test for the military.
well, not only that, they don't, not only is cursive gone, within the next
No
5
spelling either.
with no spelling, no cursive, no punctuation, within the next 5 years, if all goes as planned,
And they
not
don't do
only
this.
will special ed be done away with, handwriting. No one will ever again teach your child how to pick up a pencil and form a letter, because why would they need to know how to do that? Because it's all going to be keyboarding. Can I run through some things and then we'll see if we can, so, anyway, so it's, and you want to go, well, eventually, just to look like a literate human being, I don't want my kid to have to make a mark. I want them to be able to sign the name. I mean, because my youngest was never taught cursive, he's got an IQ over 160, but he looks like he's illiterate when he writes his name. It's pitiful. All right, well, first of all, let me say, like Candy, don't take my word at anything. Please check everything I'm saying. Back it up a little bit. Recently, a whole lot has been made about the need for standards, as if there were no standards in America or Western society prior to the advent of Common Core. That's just a crock. Colonial America, as a matter of fact, early colonial America was the most literate culture in world history. In cities like Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, literacy was at almost 100%. In rural areas, everyone included, you're looking at high 80s, 90% literacy. Okay, that's what you're dealing with. Jeffersonian students, in order to be admitted to high school, not to graduate, to be admitted, you had to have a thorough understanding of advanced mathematics, basic calculus, basic trigonometry, there's nothing basic about those to me, astronomy, and you had to be fluent in classical languages. That was high school admissions. And regardless of what your education level is, although I'll say the older you are, the better chance you have of passing, get online, look up any of the 8th grade graduation tests from 100 years ago. I challenge anyone in this room to pass one of those things, okay? That there's been a sort of chronological snobbery that has taken over, that somehow we are better, brighter, more enlightened than anyone who's ever been before us, and they were all just idiots, and it's simply not true. So, so we've always had standards, but they were done by teachers and parents and local communities, and if your teacher, your school wasn't getting the job done, well then you'd find another girl who would do it, or you'd find somebody else, you'd hire a minister who would also teach the school, but they'd get it done. And the further we've moved from that, the lower we've seen the standards go. Now, roughly, it all started to change roughly 150 years ago when this philosopher from Britain, Herbert Spencer, determined that he knew what everyone needed to know. And he wrote out, and it's his thesis or essay was, "What knowledge is of the most worth?" And he had determined that children didn't need to waste time with art or music or history or even mathematics, unless it was related to science, that he was a man of logic and science and everything had to do with science. And because we colonists had always had this presupposition that the Brits were somehow just smarter than us, we fell right in line. And then by the 1890s, we said, hey, wait a minute, we've got a few smart people here, so we put together the Committee of 10, headed by the president of Harvard, and we came up with our own standards, but there was nothing mandatory about them. But all of a sudden you had people saying, hey, here's what everybody needs to know. And the idea that a small group of people in one room can determine what everyone will ever need to know is just ludicrous. And so this is what all children from this day forward will ever need to know. Well, it must not have been a very good list, because 10 years later, they were at it again, and they were coming up with a whole new set of standards, and it went on until we got to Carter, and we got to No Child Left Behind, we got Race to the Top, we got Standards 2000, we've gotten all these names, and the more we do it, and I'm putting the dumber the kids get. Let's be clear about this. Common Core and what's going on in our textbooks has little to nothing to do with R's and D's or LFs.